Hi, so my current role is lead performance nutritionist with Munster Rugby. On a day-to-day basis, I'm mainly responsible for the fueling needs of the players in the system and in our training bubble. It involves liaising with caterers on menu planning and designing lots of different meals, recipes and ideas for what the players can eat on site. I'll also conduct dietary assessments with players as and when necessary, and then come up with different bespoke nutrition plans for each individual. I think in a team sport it's quite common to think that they all eat quite similar, and to a certain extent they do, but everyone has very much an individual plan to follow. I'll also take body composition measures strategically throughout the season. Here we take skin fold measurements and we also DEXA our international players 3 or 4 times throughout the year as well, to give us a good comprehensive picture of body composition, and a lot of the work will come off the back of that and focus in on specific individuals who might have different targets to hit, whether it's weight gain or loss, body fat loss, lean mass gain. There's lots of kind of actions that come off the back of body composition assessment, but the focus really should be on getting the dietary intake and the habits right there first. We don't do hydration assessment as a routine thing. We tend to pick out specific individuals that might need a bit of attention in that area, and like I say, we usually pick up that information first, or be able to identify that could be a problem through the diet assessment and consultation process, and then we might look to do some hydration assessment off the back of that. We'll also look at other markers, some blood markers for a few different aspects, and one of the things timely at this point in the season is to look at vitamin D status. It's been particularly important to address that during COVID. People aren't out and about as much, so they're not getting as much exposure to sunlight, and subsequently we have to see that their vitamin D level is adequate. It's associated with lots of different components of immunity, and there's also appears to be a link from a performance point of view as well. There's lots of different companies that we also have to liaise with and deal with on the day-to-day basis as well, to make sure that we have adequate stocks and supplies of everything that we need, really. So that's the general sort of day-to-day, and there's a few sort of little projects and small bits of work and that we'll focus on at strategic times throughout the season as well. So how I ended up at Munster, my kind of pathway, I suppose, I'd completed my BSc in Sport and Exercise Science. I then went on to study Sport and Exercise Nutrition Masters. Off the back of that, I'd picked up a couple of internships, one at the university I was studying at, and another with British weightlifting, and I just took every opportunity possible to try and develop my experience. I hadn't had any experience beforehand as well. I suppose I was a bit behind the game, really, so I just took every opportunity that sort of came my way. And the year after my masters, I'd picked up a internship with Leicester City. That then went on to paid consultancy work for a further 2 seasons. So I was their academy nutritionist there. At that point, I'd also put kind of my interest areas together, I suppose, and started self-funding a PhD program that initially was focusing on recovery, but very quickly it took a direction down the immunology route, and knowing that athletes need to be healthy to train. So how do I identify when they're at risk, and what is the diet implication there? So I think I'd been self-funding for a couple of years and then picked up a full-time funding and teaching position. Was in that for 2 years, and then the job at Munster came up, and sort of within 3 weeks I'd up sticks, left the UK, moved over here. I continued to finish my PhD. Luckily, I was on the write up point by then, so finished that off while I was here, and 5 seasons in, that's kind of where we're up to. I think as a summary, sport nutrition is a hard field to get into, but when you do, it's such an enjoyable place to work. It's a great environment. There's so many different characters that you'll come across working with athletes, but also the colleagues that you'll work with and meet along the way. I think that's something that's really rewarding. And some of the work that I've done previously with adolescent athletes, with youth athletes, and seeing athletes absolutely flourish and go on to succeed and achieve in their relevant sporting fields is something that you get a lot of satisfaction from, and a good feeling of pride, I think, which is really a really good feeling to have in the workplace. So challenging, but absolutely rewarding when you're able to contribute to someone else's success. I think is a really good feeling that's definitely worth the challenge and the time it'll take to become a success in sport nutrition. But persevere, seek opportunities out, take opportunities if they do present themselves, even if you're unsure, because it's still worth having a go and trying your best to gain experience. So some of the qualifications that you'll need to get into sport nutrition route, that it varies a little between employers. In general, they'll want a sports science or nutrition related undergrad, and then usually a postgraduate qualification in vice versa sort of thing, a sport nutrition qualification preferably, but you could also go down a dietetics route and then do postgraduate qualification in a sports science related field there. So there's a couple of different avenues into sport nutrition. Some of the other things that you would want to tick off along the way, any kind of nation relevant anti-doping qualifications. Food hygiene is always a good one to get boxed off early. Sometimes safeguarding qualifications if you're going in to work with young and youth athletes. ISAC is another one, so that you're able to conduct body composition assessment. There's quite a few different little qualifications that you want to try and tick off along the way. They don't all need to be done at once, but it's important to have a plan laid out so that you can get those done as you're progressing through study, and a few when you've finished study. The best advice I can give is to look at job specs that are out there and see what boxes that you still have left to tick, and make sure that you have a plan in place to get those done. Like I say, as you progress through your study or when you've completed study, those first kind of couple of years after you've finished, make sure you're upskilling yourself and getting all the relevant requirements that are laid out by different employers. How to get ahead, I suppose, of other nutritionists. It's really important to have a good broad knowledge. It's important to have a really specific interest area. Mine is athlete health and recovery. I suppose that's progressed on for me in terms of injury nutrition, but it's really important to have a good, broad understanding of exercise physiology, exercise metabolism, and across the board of nutrition, whether it's fueling, recovery, looking at immunology to a certain extent, injury nutrition, like I say. It's really important to read broad and develop an interest so that you become really proficient in an area, and that becomes your I suppose unique selling point. What is it that you do better than anyone else? And that's a really important thing to have. I think a lot of nutritionists now will have social media pages and outlets, but sometimes they can be great, but sometimes they can be possibly a hindrance depending on the content that you post. Employers will in general look out and do their research on the applicants and look up people's social media outlets. So it's important to have good evidence-based content, so not just opinion-based, but make sure that you're using the literature to support what you're advocating or promoting, really. So in terms of setting yourself apart as well, you've got to seek opportunities and network as much as possible, which can be challenging and tricky for some. I personally wouldn't have been the bravest person when I was newly kind of fresh graduate to walk up to senior academics and to speak to them at conferences and those sorts of events. However, it does come with time and age, I think. So just try and practice and get opportunities where you can. I think it's important to respect people's time. So if you're trying to seek opportunities, just being realistic about what is available at certain times. If you're seeking like team sports, for example, it's not the best approach to contact a practitioner when it's finals time of the season, when it's coming to the end point, or pre-season really is usually a busy time. So just pick and choose your times to contact people well, and do your research when you do. Don't be oblivious to what's going on in that person's work environment, sport environment. Have a bit of interest and knowledge in the team or the club or whoever you're approaching, and so just be tactful, but do try and seek out opportunities. They are there, and I think it's a responsibility of practitioners to try and create opportunities as and where possible. So keep your eyes peeled for those sorts of things, because it's hard. I do appreciate it's hard to get experience. So you've just got to be ready, be prepared, have CVs and cover letters, I suppose, as a template, ready to go, but make sure you are specific to the job or that you're applying, or the opportunity that you're going for, and make your cover letter relevant, not just generic introduction. Write it specifically as to why you're going to be that best person for that specific job, not because you're seeking opportunities and you'll go for anything sort of thing. Make sure you're showing an interest in the position that you're going for. So I think some of the challenges that you will face is a lack of opportunity. It's a very bespoke and fairly small field as a sport nutritionist. But I would say to try and think of alternatives. If you can't get into the professional sports team environment, where can you access, and how can you build up a portfolio of even case study work to demonstrate that you are working with aspiring athletes, but that is an evidence basis behind it. There's no point just, I helped person X at the gym to do this, and I did a great job. You've got to show that there's an evidence basis behind what you're doing. But yeah, like I say, if you can't get into pro team sport, what's the next tier down, or who's the case study that you can really kind of work with and demonstrate that you're a good practitioner. Some of the other challenges that you can face is in pro sport especially, it's a competitive environment from a player point of view, but there's usually competitive side to staff as well. So sometimes it can be challenging, the working relationships that you'll experience, depending on the sport you're in, and male and female aside, almost there's usually people in pro sport that have an ego and like to voice their opinions. So it's about learning how to manage the working relationships that you have, and to not be offended or dominated, really, because it's possible people like to dominate with their opinions. So it's about how you manage that and how you overcome that. It's hard to do. It comes with experience. It comes with confidence in knowing that you have every right to voice your opinion in a room full of other people, because you're just as experienced and qualified as them in your specific area. So it does come with practice, but it's the same in any working environment that you'll go into. There's always challenging people, challenging behaviours, but I think the most important thing is to be a solutions-based person, as opposed to having a negative mindset and sort of accepting, well, that's how it is and I don't like it anyway. And you've got to be able to work around things, find a solution, find a way to make sure that you're doing your best job, and that you're flourishing, and instead of just becoming bogged down by the things around you that you can't control. You've got to make sure that you're able to do your best work, and don't let the lack of experience that you probably feel you have at the minute deter you from pursuing a career in sport nutrition. Like I said, it's extremely rewarding, and I think sometimes the hard work to get there makes it that little bit more rewarding.